name's Elena, and today I'll be demonstrating how to set up feeds with a TJ Mickey. First, some supplies you'll need are distilled water, a container for your distilled water, syringe. I always have a rag or towel. If you're setting up for somebody else, I suggest gloves, but if you're doing it on yourself, wash your hands well. You'll need your extension, which if you have a Mickey, most Mickeys always come with an extension. You're going to need your bag, your formula, your pump of course, and I use 2 extra supplies that help. I'll use my Tubie belt or tape to secure the extension once I'm connected. The first step is going to be setting up your pump with your formula. I will often connect myself first, but I find it easier if you have your pump already set up. It's just easier to go from flushing directly to connecting and running. So I use a backpack all the time. This is how I always carry my pump unless I'm going to be in bed all day, or if I'm in the living room, I use a feeding arm assistant. But let's go ahead and set up the pump first. Okay, so first things first, take your bag out of its bag. I'm using the 500 milliliter bags because I am running in my backpack. If I'm running in my room, I'll use a 1000 milliliter bag with the extra water, and I'll have my pump set to intermittently feed some water too for hydration issues that I have. But right now I'm just going to be using this because I'm going to be carrying my backpack today. First things first will be to pour the formula into the bag. I am using Kate Farms peptide formula. Coram so wonderfully messed up and sent me the pediatric kind for like the 3rd time. And it's less calories, but it's still the same formula, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. Oh, Coram. I really don't see how it's that difficult. Maybe you could create an online order where the patient just goes online and clicks supplies that they need. That would be really helpful. Anybody from Coram? Okay, so I just poured all my formula into the bag and then snap it closed. So now my formula is all in here. The next step will be putting the bag into the pump. So the pump has a top that opens. Mine is a Kangaroo Joey pump. The top pops open like so, and it has this little contraption for this part of your bag to fit through. So you want to take this part that's round and has this little lip on it, and you stick it in like that and slide it into place. It'll click and it won't move. And then you take this expandable part, stretchy I guess, and you snap it right in to that part. Slide this over to that side, and it will look like that, and should close completely flat. If it's popping up or doesn't close, something here is not right. This is often the case. Just make sure it's all the way slid in. Now we're going to set up our feeds. So turn the pump on. I love that part. I'm going to clear the settings just to show how to set it up. Okay, so now we have a blank screen. Depending on what your feeds will be, you're going to adjust your feeds to that. For me, I am right now restarting my feeds, so I'm going to keep my feed rate, this top one, very slow. only about 20 mLs right now. And then you're gonna go ahead and hit enter. This will change the last digit, so let's just run at 25 right now, okay? Now that everything's set up on here, you're going to hit done and prime pump. Okay, it's very important to take this cap off if you don't want to lose an eyeball, because it will shoot off with the air pressure from the pump. So you can either take it off completely, or sometimes what I like to do, because I don't like my formula just dripping out of here, is I'll just loosen this part just slightly off of it so there's no air pressure. Okay, so now you're going to auto prime. Okay, and it always stops part of the way, and so you just need to hold to prime feed till it's done. Okay, so I felt it hit this, so I know it's full all the way. Now that you've set up your pump, it's time to connect your extension, so you can connect your extension to your feeds. So first thing is to make sure there's no air in your extension, because air in the jejunum is just as bad, if not worse, than air in the G. So to do that, we're going to take our syringe and take up a little bit of the distilled water that we have, push out all the air from the pump, or the syringe, excuse me, connect it to your extension while it's disconnected from your body, and push the water through. This is why I have a rag. This gets messy. And just push till water starts pushing through. Okay. It's now time to connect your extension. Most all extensions have a marker to show where to connect to your stoma. So I'm going to open up my stoma to be able to access my J port. This is my G port over here. So I want the J, because that's where I run my feeds to. So I look for the marker, and I look for the marker on my stoma, and I connect the two together, and then I twist in the direction of the lock. Now it's locked into place. Now we're all connected with the extension, so it's time to flush some water into the tube. I do this before feeds just to make sure that everything's cleared, running okay, feels okay before I connect my feeds. It's also really good just to clean through your tube often. I would flush multiple times a day throughout between feeds with just distilled water. Okay, so I just pushed all the water in, and now it's time to connect my actual pump bag to myself, my feeds. So you just take this part off and switch it out for the syringe. One purple for the next. Connect it up. Unsnap myself to make sure it's all open. And on your pump, just go ahead and hit run. And that's how you set up a GJ tube for feeds. So now that you're all connected, one thing that I like to do if I'm not wearing a Tubie belt is to tape my extension to my body. I do this because I have a crazy dog that attacks me all the time, and it can get very painful getting your tube pulled. If it's not pulled out, the pulling can start to actually cause granulation tissue. So do the best you can to make sure that your tube moves as little as possible, and I do this by using tape. Although the tape does get uncomfortable, itchy, and leaves a lot of tape residue, it's definitely better safe than sorry, in my opinion. Set up, and I'm gonna run my feeds for the day, probably go out to my garden, see my puppy, and yeah, I can eat and do anything else. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. I really hope that this video was helpful to you. If you have any suggestions or questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. Again, I appreciate you watching, and stay tuned for the next Tubie Talk video. Thanks. Bye. One thing that I noticed specifically about these bags and the Joey pumps is if you already have formula in the bag and all the way pumped through, and this becomes disconnected from the pump, it's almost always impossible to get it back in stably. You typically always will need to re-pour all of your formula into a new bag. So that's just you want to make sure this is clear of formula to put it in to the pump setup. Okay, why are you showing your belly? Most extensions have a lot of fur covering them, apparently. Whoops. I literally almost just pushed gas again. Nope. I don't know what is going on here. Like, that's what happens when you try to cut your own bangs. That's probably so unhelpful being backwards.